The first time they said my name out loud, the music stopped in my head. Not in the room, only inside me. A crystal glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered near my feet, but no one noticed. All eyes were on me, on the woman my brother had buried alive for 7 years. Wet, his mother-in-law whispered, her smile collapsing. That's her. I stood perfectly still, wearing borrowed elegance, my pulse calm in a way that only comes after you've survived the worst. Across the room, my brother turned pale. He hadn't planned for this, he had planned everything else. For 7 years I didn't exist in his new life, no photos, no past. I was the stain he scrubbed out before marrying into money, power, and polished cruelty. When he married Sarah from one of the city's most elite families, he told them he was an only child. When they asked about parents, he said they had died young. And when I called him the night before his engagement, crying, desperate, he said something that never left me. Please, he said quietly, don't ruin this for me. That sentence became my coffin. I remembered standing outside the hospital 2 months later, holding test results that shook in my hands. I remembered calling him again, this time with a voice already breaking. He didn't answer. He never did again. When our father died alone in a rented room, it was a neighbor who called me, not my brother. When the debt collectors came, they came for me. When I sold my books, my jewelry, even my blood at a clinic for money, he was busy learning the correct way to hold a wine glass. And I told myself something then, something that saved me and destroyed me at the same time. If I survive this, I will never beg again. The party was a celebration of success. A marble mansion glowing with chandeliers, laughter sharp as knives, wealth worn like perfume. I wasn't invited, I was hired. A catering manager looked me up and down earlier that evening. Unimpressed. You've worked high-profile events before. Yes, I said, and I didn't lie. Pain is a very exclusive event. I had survived it. I wore black, simple, clean and visible. Or so my brother thought. When I entered the hall, I saw him instantly, older, sharper. His smile practiced. His wife beside him, beautiful in a way that had never known hunger. His eyes skimmed the room, calculating, avoiding the corners of memory. He didn't look at me because he didn't believe I could ever be there. That was his mistake. I didn't approach him. I didn't even look at him for a long time. Revenge, I learned, doesn't begin with confrontation. It begins with control. I listened. I learned. His father-in-law, respected, powerful, was boasting near the bar about values, about honesty, about how carefully they had chosen their son-in-law. A man with no baggage, he said proudly, a clean past. I stepped forward then, just enough for the light to catch my face. I'm sorry, I said softly, politely. Did you say no family? He turned, smiling automatically. Then his eyes changed. Recognition is a strange thing. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the quiet horror of realization. He stared at me, searching his memory, rearranging facts. Somewhere behind his eyes. I'm his sister, I said gently before he could speak, the one he forgot to mention. The silence spread fast. My brother felt it before he heard it. He turned slowly, like a man approaching his own execution. Our eyes met. His were full of terror. Mine were empty of mercy. What are you doing here? He hissed when he reached me, his smile glued painfully to his face. Working, I replied. Something you taught me to do alone. His wife stared between us. You have a sister. He opened his mouth, closed it. Lied once more. Well, we're not close. I laughed quietly. That's one way to describe abandonment. The word hit harder than a slap. People were listening now, not openly. Elite ears never appear to listen. They absorb. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him of everything, not yet. I let the truth leak slowly. Like poison in fine wine. I took care of our father when he was dying, I said, addressing the room more than him. I signed the hospital papers. I paid the bills. Alone. I looked at his wife. Did he tell you our father begged to see him one last time? She said nothing, but something cracked behind her eyes. My brother grabbed my arm. Stop, he whispered. You don't know what you're doing. I leaned close enough for only him. I'm doing. I learned it from you. I pulled my arm away and continued calm, precise, spoke of dates, of documents, of messages unanswered. I spoke like someone who had rehearsed this moment in the dark for years. His mother-in-law's face hardened. Is this true? He tried to laugh it off. She's unstable, she's always careful. I interrupted softly. You taught me how damaging words can be. Then I did the only cruel thing left. I handed over a file, medical records, death certificates, bank statements showing transfers he made to himself while our father was dying. Proof isn't loud, it's heavy. The room didn't explode, it froze. His wife stepped away from him. Not dramatically, just enough to end him. Security approached, unsure who to remove. The host, his father-in-law. Escort him out, he said, his voice colder than marble. And get this woman a chair. My brother looked at me as they led him away. Not angry, not even hateful, just small. He said. I met his gaze, steady. No, I replied. I stopped letting you live mine. The party resumed eventually, they always do. But something fundamental had shifted. Names were reevaluated. Alliances reconsidered. His phone would stop ringing. Doors would close without explanation. As for me, I sat alone for a while, hands folded, breathing evenly. I didn't feel triumph, I felt release. Later, as I left the mansion. Why now? She asked quietly. I considered the night sky before answering. Because silence kept me alive, I said. But truth set me free. She nodded. She understood more than she said. I walked into the dark without looking back. Revenge hadn't made me whole, but it had given me my name back, and sometimes that's enough to finally sleep in peace. I thought the night would end there, with me walking away lighter. My brother erased from my future the way he erased me from his past. I was wrong. Revenge, real revenge, doesn't end when the room goes quiet. That was only the first breath. The days after the party unfolded like a controlled burn. I didn't call anyone. I didn't explain myself. I let the truth do what it does best when left alone: spread. Elite families don't scream, they investigate. They don't accuse, they verify. And once they do, they never forget. My brother tried to reach me the next morning. 20 missed calls, then messages: "We need to talk. You embarrassed me. You have no idea what you've ruined." I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. 7 years ago, I had sent messages like that, softer. Desperate, he never replied. I deleted the thread without answering. Closure is not a conversation, it's a decision. By the third day, the rumors hardened into facts. His father-in-law quietly froze joint accounts. Business partners postponed meetings indefinitely. Invitations stopped arriving. In elite circles, disappearance is the most brutal punishment. You're not attacked. You're erased. He showed up at my door on the 4th night. I knew it was him before I opened it. Some instincts never leave you. I stood there for a long moment, my hand on the knob, listening to his breathing through the door. Heavy, uneven. The sound of a man who had run out of lies. When I opened it, he looked smaller than I remembered. Not poor, just exposed. "You planned this?" he said without greeting. I stepped aside and let him in. Not out of kindness. Out of control. He looked around my apartment, bare walls, second-hand furniture, the quiet dignity of survival. He scoffed weakly. "So this is what you destroyed my life for?" I closed the door behind him. "You destroyed your life," I said calmly. "I just stopped protecting it." He turned on me then, anger finally finding its voice. "You could have come to me. You could have asked for help." I laughed. It surprised even me. I repeated. "You hid me like a crime. You rewrote our family because it didn't match your ambition." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." I walked past him, poured myself water. My hands were steady. That's how I knew I had already won. "I understand pressure," I said. "I understand choosing between dignity and survival. I understand being alone when it's inconvenient for everyone else." He softened then. "They're talking about divorce," he said quietly. "Her family thinks I manipulated them. You could fix this." I turned to face him slowly. "You still think I exist to fix things for you?" Silence. "I didn't expose you to punish you," I continued. "I exposed you to stop lying. What happens next is none of my responsibility." He stepped closer. "You hate me." I met his eyes. "No," I said honestly. "That's the tragedy. I don't feel enough to hate you." That broke him. His shoulder sagged, his voice dropped. "I was scared," he whispered. "If they knew about you, about where we came from, I thought they'd never accept me." I held his gaze. "They didn't reject you because of me," I said. "They rejected you because you proved you could abandon blood for status." He left without another word. No shouting, no threats. Just the sound of a door closing on a version of my life that would never return. Weeks passed. I went back to work, back to routine. Healing is boring like that, quiet, repetitive, unglamorous. But something unexpected began to happen. People started finding me. A distant cousin reached out. Then an old family friend. Someone from the past who had heard what happened and wanted to say, "You weren't wrong." Each message stitched a small piece of my history back into place. One afternoon, I received an email from his former father-in-law's office. They wanted to meet me. I almost declined. Almost. But curiosity isn't weakness. It's awareness. The meeting was formal. Polite, measured. "We owe you an apology," the older man said, folding his hands. "We pride ourselves on character. We failed to see the truth." I listened. I didn't nod. I didn't soften. "I didn't come here for an apology," I replied. "I came because you asked." He studied me for a long moment. "We're dissolving certain arrangements," he said carefully. "Your brother will not be part of our family or our business moving forward." I felt no surge of victory, just confirmation. "Good," I said. "Then this meeting is over." As I stood to leave, he added. I stopped him with a look. "No," I said. "I don't need replacements. I needed truth." Outside, the city felt different. Not kinder, just clearer. That night, I stood by my window and thought about the girl I used to be, the one who thought survival meant silence, the one who believed loyalty was one-sided, the one who waited for a brother who never came. I whispered to her, "You're safe now." My phone buzzed once more. A final message from him. "I don't know who I am without the life I built." I typed back only one sentence. "Now you know how it feels to be erased." I turned off my phone. Revenge hadn't made me powerful, it had made me honest. And honesty, I learned, is the sharpest blade of all. The silence that followed was different from the silence I had lived in before. That silence was suffocating, heavy with unanswered prayers. This one was clean, earned. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm when the air finally remembers how to breathe. Still, revenge has an aftertaste, it lingers. A month later, I saw his face again. On a business news site, not in a headline, not even in the article. Just a small photo buried halfway down the page, captioned with words like former associate and internal restructuring. In his world, that was humiliation. For a man who had built himself on appearances, invisibility was a slow death. I closed the tab without emotion. I had learned not to feed ghosts. What I didn't expect was the knock that came the following Sunday morning. It was his wife. She stood there without makeup, without jewelry, without the armor wealth gives you. For the first time, she looked like a woman instead of a symbol. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "I won't stay long," she said, voice tight. She looked around the apartment the same way my brother had, but without judgment, with curiosity, with something close to shame. "I didn't know," she said finally. "About you." "I know," I replied. "You weren't supposed to," she swallowed. "I married a version of him that never existed." I didn't comfort her. I didn't attack her either. This wasn't my war anymore. He begged me to fix it, she continued. To talk to my parents. To explain. And I asked. "And I realized something," she said softly. "If he could erase you, he could erase me." That was the moment I saw it, the crack where her life would split in two. Because truth once seen doesn't go back into hiding. "I'm leaving him," she said. "I just needed to see you. To understand what he ran from." I met her eyes. "It didn't run from me?" I said. She nodded, tears threatening but not falling. "Strong people cry later." As she stood to leave, she paused. "You didn't just expose him," she said. "You exposed a lie my family lives by. That success excuses cruelty." I watched her go, feeling neither triumph nor guilt. Only a strange calm. Some damage doesn't need revenge. It collapses on its own. Life moved forward. I enrolled in night classes, psychology. I wanted to understand how people break and how some rebuild. During lectures, I found myself listening harder when professors talked about moral injury, about betrayal trauma, about the silence victims are forced into by social convenience. I wasn't studying anymore. I was reclaiming language. One evening, a classmate asked me why I chose the subject. I thought about my brother, about the party, about the look on his face when his carefully constructed identity dissolved in public. "Because people don't fall apart all at once," I said. "They fracture quietly. I want to know where the cracks begin." Months passed. I stopped checking news sites, stopped measuring my healing against his downfall. That's how I knew I was finally free, when his suffering no longer validated my survival. Then, on a rainy afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. His voice was hoarse, older. "I'm leaving the city," he said. "No greeting, no apology. I've sold what was left. I'm starting over somewhere no one knows me." I leaned back in my chair, watching rain streak the window. "Good," I said. "I never said I was sorry," he continued, rushed now, desperate to empty himself before courage ran out. "And I should have. I was ashamed of you because I was ashamed of where we came from. I thought if I buried the past, I could become someone else." I closed my eyes. "You did become someone else," I said quietly. "Just not someone better." There was a pause. Then, almost childlike, "Do you think we could ever be family again?" That was the real test. Not exposure. Not revenge. Forgiveness. I thought about the years. The hunger. The unanswered calls. "The father who died waiting." "No," I said honestly. "Not the way you want." Another pause, longer this time. But I added, "I don't wish you harm anymore." He exhaled shakily. "That's more mercy than I deserve." "Yes," I agreed. The call ended without drama. No tears, no closure speech. Just an ending that didn't ask to be reopened. That night, I dreamed of our childhood home, not as it was, but as it should have been. Light through cracked windows. A version of us that never learned to hide. When I woke, I didn't feel loss. I felt acceptance. A year later, I attended another party. Different city, smaller space. No chandeliers. Just people who spoke without masks. When someone asked about my family, I answered without flinching. "I come from survivors," I said, "and I am one." No pity, no shock. Just respect. As the night ended, I caught my reflection in a mirror. Not polished, not powerful, but real. My brother had hidden me because he believed being seen was dangerous. He was wrong. Being unseen nearly destroyed me. Being recognized by others, by myself, saved my life, and that was the most devastating revenge of all. I thought the story had ended there, in quiet acceptance, in a life rebuilt without spectacle. But some truths don't settle immediately. They wait, they watch. And when you finally believe you're safe, they return, not to hurt you, but to show you who you've become. 2 years passed. I finished my degree. I moved to a brighter apartment with windows that faced the sunrise instead of brick walls. I learned how to sit with joy without expecting punishment. Healing didn't arrive as happiness, it arrived as stability, as sleep, as mornings where my chest didn't feel tight for no reason. People in my life knew fragments of my past, never the whole thing. I no longer needed witnesses to my pain to prove it was real. That chapter had closed. Then one evening, after class, I received a message that didn't carry desperation or guilt. It carried formality. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply, but I'm asking for one meeting, not as your brother, as a man who finally understands what he destroyed." It included a location, a public cafe, neutral ground. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I missed him, but because I wanted to see what accountability looked like when there was nothing left to gain. I went. He was already there when I arrived. No expensive suit, no confident posture, just a man with tired eyes and a humility that didn't feel rehearsed. He stood when he saw me, then hesitated, unsure whether he was allowed to. I sat across from him without greeting. I won't take much of your time, he said quietly. I know I lost the right to it. I didn't respond. I've been in therapy, he continued, voice steady but thin. Not to get you back. To understand why I thought erasing you was survival. That sentence landed differently than all the others before it. Not because it excused him, but because it named the crime accurately. I used people, he said. Stories. Silence. You were the easiest to sacrifice because you loved me. I watched him carefully. No theatrics, no self-pity, just truth stripped bare. I'm leaving the country next month, he added. There's nothing here for me anymore. No repu circle to return to. I took a sip of my coffee. Why tell me? He met my eyes. Because the version of me who hid you would have left without acknowledging you existed. I don't want to be that man ever again. The silence stretched between us, not hostile, not warm. Just honest. I don't forgive you, I said finally. He nodded. But, I continued, I don't carry you with me anymore. His shoulders dropped slightly like he'd been holding his breath for years. That's enough, he said. When we stood to leave, he hesitated again. You're stronger than I ever was, he said. Not because you survived, but because you didn't become me. I watched him walk away. This time it didn't feel like abandonment, it felt like release. Years later I would tell my students, because yes, I became a lecturer, that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people who believe success gives them permission to rewrite morality. I taught them that silence can be weaponized, that loyalty without boundaries is self-erasure, and that revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like clarity. One night, long after the past had stopped knocking, I attended another event. This one wasn't glamorous. It was a fundraiser for underprivileged students, children who came from the kind of backgrounds people like my brother used to run from. A woman approached me during the break. Your story helped my daughter, she said softly. She stopped believing she had to be ashamed of where she came from. I felt something warm spread through my chest. Not pride, purpose. Later, standing alone near the window, I thought back to that first party, the one where I had been hidden until recognition shattered the illusion. I remembered the fear in my brother's eyes, the shock in the room, the way truth had moved like a quiet blade. That night had not been about revenge, it had been about reclamation. I had reclaimed my name, my history, my right to exist without permission. My brother thought hiding me would protect his future. But the future doesn't belong to those who erase others. It belongs to those who survive being erased and speak anyway. I turned off the lights in the hall and walked out into the night, no longer a secret, no longer a shadow, just a woman who refused to disappear. And that was the ending he never saw coming. The next morning, the city felt sharper, as though the streets themselves remembered the night I had walked away from my past. I didn't look for my brother, I didn't need to. Revenge had never been about him, it had always been about reclaiming myself. But life, as I learned, has a way of testing the lessons you think you've mastered. Weeks passed, quiet weeks. Work, study, running errands, occasional coffee with friends. I lived in a rhythm so ordinary that the horrors of the past seemed almost like a dream. Almost. Until the message arrived. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. Just a single line. They're coming for you. At first I laughed. Threats from a man I had erased from my life. Pathetic. But as I read it again, the words sank. They. Not him. Not my brother, they. Someone who still remembered power, who still believed that wealth could rewrite the past. I didn't panic. That's not who I had become. I thought back to the first party, to the control I had held over my emotions while he trembled. If I could orchestrate years of slow, burning revenge, I could face this. I left the apartment cautiously, taking only what I needed. My destination wasn't clear even to me at first, only that I needed to be mobile, to move without leaving traces. Years of being hunted by debts and fear had made me instinctive. By evening, I found myself in a small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Dust covered the beams, and the faint light from the broken windows made long shadows dance across the concrete floors. The kind of place no one thinks to check, and exactly the kind of place I had prepared for just such a moment. I waited. Hours passed. Then, the first silhouette appeared near the doorway. Elegant, controlled, professional. Not the kind of person who comes for arguments, they come for results. You know who I am, the voice called out. Smooth, confident, calculated. I stepped forward. I know exactly who you are and why you're here. Two more figures emerged, one taller, broader, their eyes sharp. They circled, testing me. The leader smiled. Your brother underestimated you. He always underestimates people. But we admire talent, persistence, and you've been quite patient. Patient enough to survive betrayal, I said. My voice echoed off the cold walls, calm, cold, measured. The leader stopped. I like that. Most people crack under pressure. Most people beg. But you're someone we could use. I frowned. Use? Yes, he said, stepping closer. You've proven something rare. Control over emotion, strategy, manipulation, and endurance. We want to partner with you. I laughed. I don't work for anyone. Least of all people who think they can intimidate me into obedience. He nodded, amused. We never thought you would say yes. But consider this, you could make more money than you've ever dreamed. Influence, power. Everything you were denied because of family complications. I paused. Everything, power, influence. The world my brother had stolen from me in his own way. It was tempting in the way fire tempts a moth. But I had survived being erased. I wasn't going back into chains. You want me to work for people who threaten me, I ask. You want me to trade freedom for wealth. Not trade, he corrected. Elevate, you're already remarkable. We just give you a stage. I stepped closer, letting the shadows of the warehouse swallow us. I already have my stage, I said. It's called truth, and you just proved it can terrify anyone, even those who think they control everything. The taller man moved suddenly, a subtle motion meant to intimidate. I reacted instantly, grabbing a chain from a nearby beam and swinging it across the floor with enough force to rattle their balance. Years of surviving fear had sharpened every instinct. They hesitated, calculating, realizing they were no longer in control. You taught me patience, I said softly, circling them now. You taught me observation. You taught me that the strongest weapon is not rage but intelligence, and patience, and the quiet accumulation of truth. By now they were tense, professional. But professionals make mistakes when they underestimate the one person who has nothing to lose. I had nothing to lose. Everything they valued, their power, their intimidation, their leverage, meant nothing here. I smiled. Not cruelly, not angrily. Calmly, I had them exactly where I wanted. I don't need you, I said. And you don't need me. But if you ever make the mistake of underestimating a life someone tried to erase, you'll remember this night. Then I disappeared into the shadows. They called after me, but their voices were swallowed by the warehouse. Powerless against the quiet predator I had become, I returned home hours later. Nothing had changed outside. The city slept. But inside I felt the profound clarity that comes when the final ghost has been confronted. Every manipulation, every threat, every person believed power could silence me had been tested. And I had survived them all. Weeks later, I received a small package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a simple note. Will underestimated you, never again. Along with it, a stack of documents, proof of illegal dealings, corruption, blackmail, enough to ruin the network that had once threatened me. I smiled. They didn't understand something fundamental. I didn't need revenge to feel powerful. Survival and truth were more devastating. I filed the documents anonymously with authorities. There would be consequences. There would be exposure. Because I had learned the most important lesson: revenge is only truly complete when it no longer requires your presence. Months passed. Life returned to its rhythm. Work, studies, quiet evenings. No fear, no hidden messages. Just freedom. And yet, I was not the same person who had entered that first party years ago. I was stronger, sharply awake. One evening, I stood on the balcony, looking at the city lights shimmering on the river. Memories came not as pain but as proof. Every betrayal, every secret, every night of hunger and fear had carved me into this. And I realized something terrifying. Not for others. For myself, I had become someone unbreakable. Someone untouchable. Someone who could walk through fire and emerge with a calm smile. Then I received a call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Not because I was afraid. Because I didn't need to. Somewhere far away, my brother was starting over. Perhaps he had learned humility. Perhaps he hadn't. But I didn't care anymore. That chapter was closed, not with vengeance, not with confrontation, but with truth, patience, and survival. I went inside and sat at my desk, opened a notebook, wrote the first line. They tried to erase me. They failed. And now I exist freely, unseen only to those who never deserved to see me. Outside, the city hummed indifferent, and I smiled, not triumphantly, not maliciously, but completely. For the first time in my life, I was untouchable. And that was the true ending. Not rage. Not recognition, freedom. Power reclaimed, identity restored. The silence was no longer heavy, it was mine. And in that silence I finally slept.